This is our continuing interviews with the gubernatorial candidates for the 2012 election. Today we're talking to Ron Algieri. Ron, do you want to make an opening statement?
No, we could get right into
the questions. Okay. Do you support binding arbitration for teacher contracts?
At this time, no. I think that for a contract resolution, management and the union, in this case the towns and the cities, need to come to an agreement. If that agreement can't be met, then the town should have some leeway in terms of whether they choose to go forward without the union or whether they can go back to the table. In order to finish the negotiation. But I don't think that binding arbitration is the answer.
Okay. Do you support contract continuation legislation?
No.
Okay. In the next fiscal year, 2012, the state will lose approximately $240 million in federal funds. At the same time, the newly enacted state aid to education formula will increase the state's commitment by 2.5% in the same fiscal year. Do you think you'll be able to honor the commitment to increase education funding?
To be honest, without having all the budget numbers and all the departments and where cuts can be made, one of the things that I've been promoting is a 0.5% reduction and that in overall state spending. That wouldn't necessarily affect each department equally, but it could perhaps affect education as well. So at this time I don't know whether 2.5% is a feasible number to increase by.
Okay. Next month, Rhode Island's 11th grade students will take their kneecap assessments in math and English. The results of those tests will account for 50% of their graduation requirement. Past performance on the test indicates that thousands of students may not achieve a passing grade. How would you address this issue?
It's an old-fashioned term, summer school. These kids, it's not always the teachers and parents' fault. That sometimes it's the kids. And in most cases, it's how motivated the student is. I think the motivation of potentially having to go to summer school for 2 summers, if the juniors don't do well on the kneecap this time around, make it mandatory that they go to summer school, or whether it be some computer-aided instruction that they will have to complete every summer. This way you don't even have to have the teachers necessarily in school, but the students would be responsible for a certain amount of work.
Do you support mayoral control of schools?
I support financial control because I think that the finances, that school committees in the past have been responsible for finances and for curricula and development of teachers and student development. But I think that the town has responsibility to the taxpayers, and since it is tax money that we're dealing with, and specifically local tax money, property tax money, that makes up the majority of the money for education in school districts, that they need to have more control. So I would favor control for town councils and for mayors, as opposed to making the financial wholly where it would be litigated if there was a discrepancy between the two parties.
Okay. Which leads into a question: would you repeal the Carullo Act?
Yes, and probably not for the reason that you'd like to see, but for the reason that the financial control, I believe, should happen through the mayors and the town councils. That it should be their decision as to how much money to spend. The towns and the citizenry can decide whether they're right in that decision every time they come up for election. If the issue is you're gypping our schools, you're making our schools less productive, you're giving our teachers less, you're giving our students less, if the voters have the issue with that and they take it to the town council and they don't get satisfaction, then remove the town council members and put in people who will either increase the spending or decrease the spending according to what we want, and not necessarily what government wants.
Should city and town councils ratify and negotiate teacher contracts instead of school committees?
I think the financial portion. I think when it comes to just the straight dollars and cents of it, and what percentage increases, health benefits, and those types of things, those should be negotiated through the town councils and mayor's offices. And in terms of productivity, in terms of student development, that's where I think that the school committees need to have the ultimate responsibility over the superintendents of the various of their school systems, and make sure that they're doing what the committee wants. The committee was appointed to oversee, and if that's what their job is, to oversee the schools and the administration of them.
In your opinion, what are the keys to improving classroom instruction?
I'm not a teacher, so from a student standpoint and as an adult learner, I went to URI and CCRI later on. In terms of instruction, I think it's more out of the classroom, like I mentioned a few minutes previously about computer instruction. I took chemistry as a college freshman, and I didn't do very well. Partly my fault, partly being young, but partly not having the tools that would make me a better student or more motivated, even as an adult, and I think a young adult. But then when I took chemistry the second time around as an adult at CCRI, there were all these wonderful tools. You could take tests on a consistent basis. Our homework, you could keep doing homework, not the same problems, different problems, until you got it right. And it's a matter of how determined you were as a student, whether you get a 70, an 80, a 90, a 100. My professor took whatever your best score was as the score for the homework. So in the same light, that carries over to testing. If repetition in most things is the key, but it's boring for kids because they don't think of it as a game. In this case, for me, it was a game. I like games. So it came down to that. So I don't know if it's so much innovation of teachers or innovation of the tools that we have available right now. The only thing I could say in terms of teachers maybe innovating is more professional development. The issue with Central Falls and their school system and their teachers not wanting to take $30 an hour to get professional development. As a pharmacy technician, I pay for my own professional development, or whatever I can find for free. Pharmacists, nurses, they all have to pay out of their own pockets for professional development. And here were teachers saying, we're going to reimburse you to go become better teachers. And they're turning it down. So I think maybe the state needs to get involved with guidelines of that, or towns. If my preference is that the state would back away from the oversight and let towns be more innovative and creative in terms of what they want to do. But the Board of Education would provide support and guidelines and computer-aided instruction and professional development seminars that the teachers could take for free, and we'd be getting better teachers, better students, and better classrooms out of it.
Okay. Do you favor one statewide school district?
No. I believe that as opposed to what we have now, which is a state and local, not an animosity and not a symbiotic relationship between the towns and the state. The state provides funding, towns try to do what they can do, state issues guidelines and mandates, and the federal government does as well, but we can't do anything about the Fed. All these things cost money, time, and it forms a rigidity. Whereas school committees don't have the ability, school committees and teachers and administrators don't have the ability to make changes in midstream. If they see something's wrong, they have to go through a whole bureaucracy to change anything in the state. So I think that local control is better. Do I think the state needs to back away from? That's what I would favor in terms of backing the state slowly out of education. I know part of the Constitution requires the state to be involved, but to what extent the involvement is, I don't know the legal ramifications of that.
Okay. Do you favor consolidated school districts? And if so, how many should there be?
No. Well, I think that whatever cost savings you get in terms of the administration, in terms of the school committees, in terms of the local bureaucracies, I think you lose the ability to make change rapidly. And especially in our time, it's about change. With the internet technology, I was watching a piece on public access television the other day, or actually Capital Television, and they were talking about how quickly things have changed in computers and in the design. So I think you need to